You recently wrote like a really thoughtful article on TechCrunch about the challenges with sort of raising money, specifically as a female and as a minority female. I recently talked to someone you introduced me to, Yana, who basically echoed the same sort of thing, that the biggest challenge right now as a female founder is fundraising. So, you know, how one, describe to me like what you see as the problem there, because we'd all like to think that, in 2022 that it wouldn't be that, but it sounds like there still is a lot of bias and unconscious bias as it pertains to fundraising.
There's actually like a bunch of different problems compounded into one. The biggest problem is that we don't actually teach female founders how the actual VC community, how that process works. Like, what are all the nuances, and how it's all really based on relationships. And because the VC community is still mostly male dominated, I've found some amazing male partners, VC partners in my raising money journey. But it's still mostly male dominated. And if it's all relationship based, then they might not be friends or be involved in those communities of female founders looking for money. And then the connection, oftentimes you're trying to make a connection with a VC. It's like, I want to give you millions of dollars, and you only have like 30 minutes to do it. And so if you don't fit the patterns of what a success in their minds are, then they will move on and find the people who fit with that patterns, because the VC community is mostly around optimizing for returns, right? A lot of startups fail because building a startup is really hard to do. And they're trying to find that one that's going to recoup the losses of all of the other startups. And so they're pattern matching, and the way that they pattern match is through relationships. And so there's a bunch of compounding things that kind of mix match there. And I think the best way to be able to solve that is for more people to say, hey, I'm going to deviate a little bit from that pattern that I've seen be successful, and invest in different kinds of people, because now we can make new patterns as an industry. And that'll be, in theory, it'll be a lot easier for different types of founders because there'll already be an established pattern.
The systemic thing that you're talking about, I think is right? Because ultimately it's like this unconscious bias, and it's just like recruiting diverse candidates. Like, it's harder because you have to work a little bit harder to source the candidates, right? It's not, it just takes more effort, right? And it's probably similar, right, in investing, where you've got to just source more diverse deals, and you will find great deals from diverse founders. It's just you have to source them, and you have to work a little bit harder to do that. And we are inherently all lazy, right? So that I think is like a valuable thing. I mean, obviously it's easier said than done. But in terms of your own experience, like, how did you, now that you're where you are, it's probably easier to think about like the next company you start, it'll be easier because there'll be some relationships that you've built, etc. But how were you personally able to do it at that time?
The truth is that you kind of have to play the game as it exists in order to change it. And so I was really fortunate to have a few friends who were female VCs and angel investors who made those introductions for me, looked over my pitch deck, gave me advice, because I knew nothing about the fundraising process. And I also found a few other female founders who were like one step ahead of me, that could also kind of coach me, and I could bounce ideas off of and see what worked for them. And the challenge is that VC is very much based off relationships, and there's a lot of psychology that's involved in trying to find the best deal, particularly in today's market. You're trying to, things are kind of skyrocketing and things are a little crazy, but it's totally different than engineering. It's completely the opposite, which is all very logical. Do this, 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 and this, and then it's going to work, and it's going to be fine. And so merging those two gaps of putting different rules aside for different goals, not applying the rules of engineering to fundraising is one of the things I really had to learn. And how I overcame it was, one, finding some great mentors who had actually done it before to kind of coach me to understand what the rules are, and then seeking out relationships. And the relationships that I found was like, one person I'd known from a person who used to be a teacher and then she went into VC. And then another person, I call her like my venture angel. I just met at a dinner.
One of the things that we're trying to do with Founders Hub, what we're launching, is give an opportunity to, for people to get mentors more easily, and to get, because it's not easy unless you start with it's like one of those chicken and egg things, right? Like if you start with a network, it's really easy to, so what advice would you give to founders who don't really have a network, don't really have access to mentors, to start to develop that?
This might be a little controversial, so pardon. But I really found what really worked for me was to put myself in the path of potential opportunity. I went to this dinner on like at 6:30 on a Tuesday night, and I really didn't want to go. And, after a whole day of working and trying to both start CodeSee's and had a full-time job, and I ended up going to this dinner, and it totally changed my life. I met people who I'm still friends with to this day, and other female founders who have become mentors to me. And so putting yourself in the path of opportunity, being a part of different communities, being part of, particularly if you're going to go online or anything like that, like join and participate is really the only way to do it. Now, this dinner happened to be before COVID. And so we were all in person together. But I think the best way is to if you need to move or if you need to spend some time in a particular region where you can network and meet people more easily, do that, because it makes the statistic of success a bit higher than being a bit more removed, or very deliberately putting yourself, joining a bunch of communities, talking to a bunch of people. And once you're in it, asking for what you need. So I had to, and not being afraid to ask for what you need. So I asked for introductions to other people. I asked for my friends to look over my pitch deck. I asked for, can I follow up with you, et cetera, and not being afraid of, even when you join the community, of asking in addition to contributing.